All right, hello everyone. This is Greg and Nate in Lawrence, Kansas, hosting the March Lawrence SharePoint user group. Appreciate everyone doing the remote social distancing today in this interesting season. Today we've got Michelle with us from Microsoft. She is an MVP, Michelle Gilbert, and many of you who've probably followed her online. I know we both have for a while, and really lucky to have her here today to share lots of information about probably a topic that I'm most interested in, which is change management and how fast things change in O365. And we'll turn it over to Michelle.
All right, thank you, Greg. Thanks, Nate. So the first slide I have up here is Lawrence SharePoint User Group, which I want to thank them for having me here. I think we scheduled this back in early fall or late summer. So finally the date has come and I'm able to share this great information to you. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. So the topic today is really about managing change in Microsoft World. Go ahead and advance the slide. There we go. My name is Michelle Gilbert, and I am a Microsoft Teams technical specialist. Here's all my information. So if you want to connect to me, just let me know where you first saw my contact information, just so I can put kind of some sort of understanding, like did you attend this conference or that conference? And I'm happy to connect. Like Greg and Nate had said, I do tweet out quite a bit. So if you want to follow me or follow me on LinkedIn, I try to find as much good information as I possibly can to tweet out, especially surrounding all the changes that are happening in the Office 365 landscape. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and just get started with talking about an Evergreen service management model. To me, this was kind of a new concept when it came out. I think it's still new for people, but it really is a shift. And I'm just going to read this verbatim because it really is pretty valuable from what Microsoft is sharing with us, which is the cloud has changed the way that Microsoft designs, releases, and communicates updates. And Office 365 has really shifted those IT responsibilities from server management to service management. And I think in our organizations, we have to figure out, what does that mean? Because we have people who have been doing server management and wrenching really in databases and so forth for so long. What does it mean to manage something up in a cloud? Or managing administration and configuration not in your environment? So trying to understand that and figure that out, hopefully I can help provide some guidance to that today. And I've got a lot of material. We're going to go really quick. I know I only have an hour, so bear with me. If there are any questions, I guess I'll expect Nate and Greg to be able to interrupt and go ahead and ask them as we go. Okay, so what is an Evergreen service model? Really, the traditional service management model in the past has been a multiple year cycle. So you've got SharePoint 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013, and so forth. So you can kind of plan that evaluation, plan the pilot, plan the testing, who's going to be a part of that pilot, what do we need to do, what's connected, are there any customizations we have to think about, will they upgrade? And that really was the IT world that we had lived in. Well, no longer is that case. Now with Evergreen Service Management, it really is quick and agile. So you're planning, you're developing, you're testing, you're releasing over and over. So much I think about this is the updates I get on the applications on my phone. How quick they are to update. Do I care? Not really. Do I know what they're updating? Not really either. We kind of have to transform our business users to have that same mentality, as long as it doesn't affect those customizations that we might have built or integrated into the Office products. So really that change management, it was kind of a steep hike. I remember being in this same predicament going, okay, well, do we go to the next version or do we wait? Maybe we don't have the funds. And so we're going to skip that version, maybe go to the next one. So think of 18, 36 month release, pretty daunting, shorter impact. We definitely have enough time to notify our users, and then another small impact. Well, let's skip that update because we didn't have the funds. We didn't have the resources, and now look what happens. It's the huge, heavy impact. And it's not just from the IT side, but it's from the business users and what they have to experience when they're using their tools and trying to just be productive. So really, Office 365 is introduced this change management model, just this continuous update, making that transition easier. Oh, there's a new feature. There's a new icon. There's a new, app or something on your ribbon or your taskbar. Those little things are easier to kind of chew on than taking something and dramatically changing it. So really, Office 365 is that software as a service solution that provides those updates. But of course, how do you handle all that change? So I'm going to introduce you to a couple ways we can do that. First, let's think about what our end users experience and can we get on top of that? So really learning about what our end users see and trying to see it before they do. So you can plan how to train, engage, communicate, and anything else you need to do when that change occurs. So one of them is Office Proplus monthly channel group. And the second is Office 365 targeted release group. If you do not know what these are, please pay attention. You may want to talk to your IT department about getting them implemented. But the Proplus update model has these what's called channel releases. And there's semi-annual channel that's targeted, and then monthly channel. By default, when you do get Office Pro Plus installed on your machines, everyone is in the semi-annual channel. That means if they're watching on Twitter, they're reading a blog and they see a new update coming, well, actually semi-annual channel, by default, you are 6 months behind everyone. So if you hear something coming, chances are you're not going to get it for at least 9 months. So just knowing that, especially as an admin, to be able to answer your power users that are saying, I really want that, I can't wait. You have to say, okay, well, why don't we introduce you and have you become a part of our monthly channel? So our monthly channel, first off, gives you the ability as an admin and as pilot group and power users to get that change first. And that gives you the ability to react and to decide, is this something we need to put some sort of training around or kind of elevate or ramp some training around something that could be more affecting in your organization. So the ways you do that is through either the deployment tool, the Office deployment tool, or through group policy. So definitely look into those. The second one is the targeted release for select users. My recommendation is to certainly choose that for all of your admins and as well as your maybe a couple of people on your help desk, maybe a few people in your pilot group, people who are natural testers that are ones that notice things that change. So what you see in front of you here is really the rings that Microsoft uses when they develop software or develop a feature and roll it out. So as you see here, you've got a feature team, that's ring 0. The next one is ring 1, that's the Office 365 team. So you've got people who are developing the feature, and then they roll it out to the next ring who are testing it and providing feedback. And then they roll out to all of Microsoft. So you get really a full 160,000 employee response on that feature, and they may pull it back. And if they don't pull it back and they've had enough testing and they feel comfortable, then they roll it out to what's called targeted release. And within targeted release, that's going to be a group of users in every company that goes ahead and in the M365 Admin Center and in settings and in organizational profile, you can select who is in that. So let's talk about some benefits there. It really allows admins, change managers, really anyone responsible for Office 365 to prepare for upcoming changes. So it gives you the ability to test and validate updates. preparing your user notifications, any documentation, especially if you have learning management systems, if you've curated content that's a part of maybe Office Proplus, for instance, and now you need to change it because the ribbon has some new changes to it. Preparing your internal help desk. I will tell you that there are a few departments bringing you along in this Office 365 journey that you want to stay close to, and help desk is certainly one of them, or service desk. And then going through any compliance and security reviews. That can be certainly crucial if one of those new changes brings up concerns for security or other departments. So you can hopefully ease their concern by pulling them and having them be a part of your pilot group as well. And last but not least is really using the feature controls to control the release of updates to end users. So that's really, again, making sure that you're seeing the change before everyone else. So on a broad scale, Microsoft has a communication schedule. It's not predictable, and it's as loose as sometimes 7 to 30 days, because rolling out to all the tenants worldwide, that can take a certain amount of time. But this is really what I have found to be the most useful, is this map here, which system requirements that are really stringent and have a big effect. At least a year, Microsoft will communicate that change is coming. And even if that it gets closer to that date and there's still customers that's saying, we're not ready for it, Microsoft may even move that date. Anything that's disruptive as well, the same amount of time. Now, roadmap, we are going to talk definitely about what's on the public roadmap for all the products, but that's usually a 30 to 90 day. So if you think of a group of individuals who are working on a feature, they may start working on it 6 months, but then as they realize, yes, we are going to implement this, we've had some testing, about 90 days maybe before it gets released, it gets to the roadmap. And then you can kind of watch it and see what's happening and any other updates that the team may share. All right, now the targeted release, and this is what I was referring to in the admin center. This is really where you're going to want to say, within a couple weeks of maybe the rest of your users getting a change, you may get it first. And really what that does is it gives you a leg up. When you're going to see that notification is in the message center. And we're going to talk a lot about the message center in a little bit. And then Office 365 blogs. So that's another space, and I'll get into where you find change. But that's really about a week out from when a change occurs. That's when that usually gets announced on a blog by that product group. So you have to kind of be following, and that's what you need to be careful of is, what product are you really focused on? And if there's multiple, then definitely follow multiple. But if you're in the security space, follow the security blogs. If you are in the Power Automate space, follow that blog and know where they are so you can kind of stay on top of what's happening. And you can even get a feed and have that go into Teams. So we'll talk about some cool ways to do integration and have that data come to you instead of you searching and trying to figure out where everything is. All right, so now let's talk about what is the Office 365 customer role? Really, before a change, during a change, and after a change, there's certain expectations. As a SaaS product, such as Office 365, Microsoft really has to commit to setting that expectation for service change, notifying customers when there is any administrative configuration change, and publishing any new features and updates, right? That's their commitment to all the customers to say, this is what we're going to be doing before a change occurs. And on the customer side, we actually have responsibilities. We have to know what the change is, what do we do with the change, who should know about the change. So we have to be up on the message center, on the roadmap. We need to have people in a room talking about it. We need to be reviewing it. And this, we'll talk about governance. And then understanding what are the requirements. During a change, Microsoft's roll out the change to the customers. right? Specifically in Office 365 clients, there are release channels we already talked about. So changes are coming in each of those. And that's letting you know, okay, this is rolling out to this particular version. And then Microsoft is also doing telemetry and monitoring of that and support escalation. Now, the customer role during that change is still checking the message center. I can't, and I may say message center many, many times, but really that's a critical, crucial space. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit more later. Another one is taking any action. A lot of times when you do get notified in the message center, it may say something like, make this fix. Well, you need to do that. That's not just like a message. So you need to, know that you need to make some sort of configuration change. That's Microsoft communicating back. And then another part of the customer role is if you're using any internal share for updates, downloading those builds. So that goes back to the Office Proplus and how, if you're doing kind of a click to run or how you're pushing it out. And then also roles as customers is break fix scenario. If you have something that's broken, you have to communicate it. And it's not just communicate it down, but communicate it out. So making sure you understand who has access to be a service admin, to create a support ticket inside of the Office 365 or M365 Admin Center. And then after a change, Microsoft has forums, user voice, listening to customer feedback all the time, on the tech community and on the roadmap, making any updates to those statuses of the features that have just been rolled. And on the flip side now, customers, they're working on adoption. Okay, we have this new product or this new feature. How do we get people to use it? Maybe it's replacing something already that you use in your company, and how do we get rid of that old thing? Reviewing any of the change management processes, providing obvious feedback to Office 365 so Microsoft knows that that's a supported feature, that you really liked it. That definitely goes two ways. And then training your users. So really the summary of the customer role really is before a change, during a change, and after a change. But I'll argue and say I think there's a little bit more because we aren't just here really to try to figure out what exactly is happening. There's a lot more that goes into that. Because remember, no longer are we into the server management, we're into service management. And so that's thinking about all of our employees and how they're using the tools. So Microsoft says who's responsible for the change is really shared between Microsoft and the customer. So these are some of the things that Microsoft does, right? We have an uptime that's been promised to us through our service level agreement, databases, storage. We know all these things are part of what we used to do. But now when I think about as customers, the responsibility is really a part of service management, tenant management, and ROI and adoption. And let me break these down a little bit, just to help you understand. In all my experiences of rolling out Office 365 in a couple of organizations, I've kind of culminated all these pieces and grouped them. And the reason for that is because I saw such a need to not just have a communication plan when a change occurs. There's a lot more to it, especially when you think about monitoring that change, how it affects your end users, learning about the change before it occurs, being able to put together training guides, communicating it, doing product training within your own organization. Certainly, some companies don't have all the resources to be able to do that, so being able to curate that or do it just in time training, as well as what's the support model between Microsoft and the help desk. So meaning help desk, our own internal as a customer, and then external to Microsoft. Who's in charge of that? And making sure there's kind of a nice communication cycle through all of it. The next piece right there is tenant management. To me, we've got to talk about data protection and administrative control. I mean, this is a software as a service solution out in the cloud. which some think is out in the wild, but it's not. And there are things that we have to understand when we're rolling this out. We need to bring in security and networking and legal and risk. And we need to talk about all this stuff. And we need to say, this is the security and compliance controls. This is how we are doing identity and license management, as well as this is how we're going to monitor to make sure we're staying on top of risky sign-ons, for instance. So having those in place is really, really crucial. And last but not least is ROI and adoption. The reason why I include that, because I've learned in IT, I'm sure like many of you, you buy something, you give it to everyone, you can't walk away. You have to focus on, well, what was the whole point of the investment to begin with? So monitoring that product usage, knowing who's using it, why are they using it? Are they using something else instead of what they, used to use? And can we get rid of that? Some of that could be shadow IT, eliminating that. I can't tell you how happy I was when I was able to shut off a SharePoint server. There's nothing better feeling than to be done with a huge project that can take years to be able to say, we don't have to worry about it anymore. It's all stored up there. We don't have to have any concern over it. But you need to really know about it. And then automating those security policies. So making sure they're applied across all the products with and to all the users. So where do you find change? Where do we find all the things that are being announced? I think everyone in this call today, and maybe that's watching on the recording, says, yeah, I attend the user groups. I go to Ignite. I go to conferences. Maybe I'm an MVP. I'm trying to go to all the places. It's hard. It is hard, and it takes a long time. But there are certain ways that you can do it to make your life a lot easier. And don't do it alone. My suggestion is certainly everyone, and we'll talk about governance, but everyone that's affected, that cares, that has some sort of stake in the ground for when it comes to Office 365, bring them into the conversation. Now, don't feel alone. So number one, hands down, Message Center. All messages, high importance, unread, that you haven't seen yet, they're all in here. So it's really the primary channel that Microsoft communicates changes to you. What I should have underlined was relevant, because it's really what's relevant to your specific Office 365 tenant. You won't see things in there that aren't what you're licensed for. So just be sure, you have people that have eyes on this. When I first started out, we had 2 roles, and that was a global admin and a user, and that's it. It's come a long way, I'll tell you that. And I would suggest Message Center reader role to be assigned to really anyone monitoring change. Make it, make it available. It's a read only. There isn't much you need to do other than give them that role access so they can see this change. So some of the FAQs that I've seen come out of the Message Center is who can view it. Again, Message Center reader, you can get a weekly digest of the updates. My recommendation is to meet, I'd say probably weekly, bi-weekly, till you get used to kind of all the changes and maybe a good setup for you. Make that something that your team does for sure on a monthly basis, just to help you stay on top of that change. There are some translation. If English is not your first language, you can certainly open up the translation options. I have tested them. They're pretty good. Can you preview changes before they're rolled out? That's a sometimes. Some changes can be previewed as long as, like I said earlier, you're in the targeted release program. And again, you can find that in the M365 Admin Center underneath your organizational profile. All right, can I find exact dates? Unfortunately, again, much like I said, when a change comes out, it's rolled out across all of the globe. So it first starts in APAC and comes all the way over. And what that also means is it may take, up to a week. And I can even say I've heard of some people getting a change in an office, and then another day later, somebody else in that same office gets a change. So it can take time to cycle down. And are these messages specific to my company? Absolutely, hands down they are. That's really how Microsoft communicates back to you. And then yes, you can get an email digest of this, like I had mentioned. You could also use an Office 365 distribution group or a distribution list. I would recommend that if you're in a large organization, just because manually managing who's all in there and adding people, especially if you have an influx of people, it's just easier sometimes to just have a group. All right, so let's talk a little bit about direct Microsoft customer channels. As you just learned, really the most direct is the message center. But there are other ways that you can get direct communication. One of them, of course, is a message center. Really important, really critical. Another one is there's an admin mobile app. I think I was the first tester of this years ago, and it was kind of bare bones, but it was fantastic in learning kind of the updates or the weird things that were happening, especially back in the DirSync days when you had conflicts. You could see, what the conflict was, who was having an issue. I would recommend downloading the admin mobile app and also allowing other admins, depending on what they have access to, get their hands on that. Another one is it's an oldie buddy goodie to me, aka.ms/manage0365. This is really a nice, I guess, collage of a lot of really great resources on how you can get direct communication from Microsoft. And of course, the Service Health Dashboard. That is in your M365 Admin Center today, but you need to have eyes on it. So it's not just about making sure, well, Microsoft is communicating to you through the message center and you're receiving that information, you're doing something with it. It's also the service. So think of, what if your help desk did not have access to any of the services, that Service Health Dashboard? And maybe Outlook, for instance, is having some issue. What would they do? You've got a lot of your employees that are calling into that help desk, and that help desk is probably going up to tier 2 or tier 3 of the Exchange team to say, yeah, we don't know what's going on. Well, usually that period of time from when people notice and then they contact because they are frustrated enough to the help desk going, I don't know what it is, go to this person. I don't know what it is, let's go to this person. This person opens up the Service Health Dashboard and they see there's an issue Microsoft had announced. Maybe it was planned, maybe it was unplanned, but it was sitting there. So instead of taking that amount of time from an end user or employee calling in saying I have an issue, when they actually, feel like they can call in, because people are busy and they don't have time sometimes to report issues. So from that time, all the way it got to this third level person, and maybe they didn't, have time. They're all day meeting or training. Could be a lot of time and a lot of time wasted. So make sure you give people access to that Service Health Dashboard that need it, and that is including your help desk. Because when they get the call, the first thing they should do, open the services up, look at all the services, and look to see if the one that the person is calling about has any issues. Then they'll know if it happens to be either a worldwide event or a data center event, and it will also have communication from Microsoft in there about what they're doing and how they're reacting and how long it might be down for. So it gives you more information. Next one is support tickets. This is really the ability to say, Microsoft, this isn't working, or we're having an issue with this. It's that direct communication inside, again, of the M365 Admin Center to put in a ticket and to work that ticket right inside of that area. That gives you the ability to also look at all the historical ones. So make sure the people who manage these services have access to put in their tickets. Or you may think of, I want to have one person that's the gatekeeper, maybe two. Of course, you always need a backup. And any issues that the service owners have are filtered through that group to kind of manage the amount of tickets, for instance, or to just make sure you have, one single filtration system. So super critical that you're using that ticketing system and doing really good management. Next one is user voice. I'm sure Nate and Greg has talked about user voice quite a bit on here. I probably don't need to plug it too much, but I'll say user voice for Microsoft is the customer feedback to them about what they want to see as a new addition or as a change that will help them be more successful. And what Microsoft does is says, if there's a certain amount of people who have said the same thing, and that's what's called a vote, after a certain number of votes, that particular feature or idea gets pushed to the top of the list for the product team, for instance, to work on it. So much like Teams private channels, that's how they are today, and it's been already released because that was a user voice request. All right, Office 365 blogs. I can't tell you enough. Much like I said earlier, about a week, sometimes T-7 of a new announcement coming out for a specific product, you'll most likely see a blog post about it. So I would follow those blogs as much as you possibly can. And last but not least is the Office 365 roadmap. Really, the roadmap provides you with really critical information on what's coming. So if you are, for instance, a SharePoint admin and you're trying to stay on top of change, so you have access to the Message Center. You probably have maybe Message Center reader role or SharePoint admin role. Then you have SharePoint admin role as well. So you're in the admin center and you can see everything in there, but then what's coming to it. So you can do that by going to following the Microsoft roadmaps that provides you, I think it's like 3 stages of what's been launched, what's in development, and what's going to be coming or what's being worked on. And you can go inside of that roadmap and put in SharePoint, and it'll filter all the things they're working on. The SharePoint team is working on, almost all, and then figure out what does that mean to you and what does it mean to your organization. You know, as you read through it, you can certainly say, oh my gosh, that one thing that my business user really had been wanting for a while, it's actually coming. And be able to grab that link and feel really good about sending that over and saying, hey, they are creating this. Don't worry, you just have to be a little patient. So I would recommend following these. Every single product group, shall I say, between Azure, Dynamics, and Office 365 and the cloud has their own area. Just be sure you go to each one of those to explore. All right, so now I'm going to talk about and shift it a little bit to community, because that's really what the call is today. With user groups, there's community of people, and there have been for years, that care about SharePoint and want to learn from each other. So take advantage of those, take advantage of these type of situations where you can virtually learn and follow the right people and follow the right places. So my first thing is Microsoft MVP. That is a great place. You probably may not have even realized you can go out there. It's just going and finding Microsoft MVPs and looking up people who are in your area and then following them on Twitter, following them maybe on their blog. Maybe they have a blog. So use MVPs because they really are people who are really passionate about Microsoft and want to know how they can help you and share change and share things that are happening in the community. Another one is Office 365 community forums. So again, a community space where you can say, this doesn't work for me, or I'm trying to do this, and other people will join in, and either somebody else has already had that idea or they may be responding just to help you. So participate is basically what I'm saying. Champions program, Caruana has a great champions program, so I would suggest checking that out. And that's where you can connect with other people who are in their same situation, trying to roll out Teams or Office 365. And of course, Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, you can join Twitter. You do not have to tweet, but you can just follow people. So it's almost like your own personal news, news feed that you curate yourself based on what you're looking for. So you can follow Microsoft Teams. You can follow even the Service Health Dashboard, the actually Microsoft service So you can see and get a tweet if there is a service down. So lots of capabilities in that space. And then there are some other community channels. There are groups of people who are MVPs that create spaces for you to learn on a monthly basis what are all those changes. And there's many flavors of them. I have a couple up here now, Collab 365, Office Flash Friday, and O365A, some MVPs up in Canada who do a fantastic job, all of them really, at curating what's the change that occurred in that given month. So you don't have to be crazy and try to figure out, oh gosh, what happened? I was on vacation. Now you can just watch something for 30 minutes and feel comfortable that you got up to date. So find one you trust. And here's another one regarding 365. Okay. Now that was probably pretty quick, but now I want to talk and shift really into developing the governance, because now that we kind of figured out where change is, what we should be doing on making sure that we have people receiving that change by putting them in the monthly channel, putting them in targeted release, on the message center, following MVPs, looking at change and curating it maybe in Twitter. Now how do you develop it? Right? How do we manage an evergreen service? Because it's not like servers and we're not in our data center and it's just like 4 or 5 people and we're just dusting the dusting the servers. Like, how do we do this and collectively make sure that we're providing the best value to our end users, our employees? Right? We have to figure out how to operationalize it. And I know it certainly can be different depending on the type of organization or size of organization you're in. You may not have a big focus even on technology, or you have so much focus on security, but security didn't even roll out Office 365, so they're trying to catch up. So there's lots of ways, but how do we do it? Number one, we have to figure out who. Like, who is the person, who's the stakeholder? And I've gone to companies and I've said, who owns Office 365? And I'll say, not many people raise their hand. Now, really, it is a group of people, right? Who are all the people that should be a part of it? Those are a large amount of people. It's your product, it's your service owners, it's anyone who cares about exchange, communication, collaboration, security, legal, records, risk. I mean, it's really everyone. And I think the goal here, when you're developing your own, is who in your organization should you be talking to? Because chances are you may have missed them. I think of product owners, of course, your admins, security, compliance. You might not have thought about compliance. Any architects or engineers you need to bring in. Don't forget support and help desk. Change management, any communications or training. Believe it or not, marketing. Yes, marketing. Because there are products that could really benefit from having your internal marketing folks help you, especially doing any sort of awareness fair, adoption program, change management. Networking, that is super critical. Are you rolling out Microsoft Stream? Should you be doing some testing and make sure that your pipe's big enough? Do you have to have a pipe? Do you have cloud identity? So things about that are really important as you're walking through. Directory services. Who manages your Active Directory? And is it the same people who manage Azure Active Directory? Do they talk to each other? If not, why? Why not? Your program and project managers. I have had an Office 365 project manager tell me before that, oh yeah, once we roll out Exchange, then we're done. And I said, what? I don't think so. I mean, only because I had rolled it out at another company, and that was when we began. So, Exchange is one. That's just a different kind of, not even a different experience. But SharePoint, that's a completely different story. And same with Microsoft Teams. So bring your program project managers along with you, because each time you roll out something, it may be a project. Self-service password reset is a project. Believe it or not, it could take quite a bit depending on what company or industry you're in. And of course, not last, but definitely not least, your business line leaders, your executives, they should definitely be a part of this, because what you're implementing And especially if you're getting rid of old garbage and you're saving money and you have a return on this investment, they're going to love to hear that story. And especially if you're making these gaps of processes that are so large, really, really small, they're going to want to hear it because it saves them money, right? Anything that saves time, improves the quality of your culture, they care. And so adding that, and that's why I said that ROI and adoption as kind of that third tier of customer responsibility, it's really critical because that's where you get the value of your investment. So I created this roles and responsibilities. It's really a RACI chart, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. And what I did is I said, who are all the people that should be a part of this? Maybe you don't even have a name. It's okay. Maybe you don't even have that role there, but should you? Or at least somebody look at that and fulfill that role. And then what are all the products? And as you roll it out, you think, well, I don't know anybody who knows about that. I don't know anybody who knows about Sway. Who will be responsible for that? Who should be consulted when there's a change in Intune? Who should be in charge of forms? Is that the same person that's in charge of Power Apps? And really, RACI is to help you find out and select who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed on that particular product. Because I'm going to say that probably security, they're going to want to know about many of them if there's a big change. Right now, as far as accountable, certainly some of the product owners or operation engineers, they're responsible. They need to be looking at that service health dashboard and reporting back to the rest of the group to say, hey, we have an outage, or hey, we have a fix we need to make. So defining those, really, really critical. And this isn't just about Office 365. I mean, really, to me, I think of a RACI document as for really any project. Now, the tenant management piece, that's really figuring out what are all the activities and ownership around there. So this is another RACI document that I included here because it's really walking through on top all of the administrative or privileged roles in O365 or even M365. And then what are all the activities that you should be focusing on? Maybe it's as much as we bought Azure Information Protection and we have to have the data classification terms defined. But just because we define them doesn't mean anyone understands them in an organization. So guess what? We need to bring in the training department and communication, maybe even marketing, probably even HR. So every one of them, when I think of, like, we could do a brainstorm and say, let's circle data classification, go, who cares about this? And just drawing kind of lines to those people, you'd be surprised. And I think traditionally, we used to just be IT in our bubble, in our own building and at our own conference room. Didn't really think outside of this. And I think that's what really Office 365 does, is it lends itself to connect to all of these people, because really it's a large project and it affects everyone. So that's why I thought assigning these responsibilities to activities and to people, or at least to roles, helps you figure out, kind of keeping set pace of when the change occurs, who should be focused on it. That's why developing an Office 365 governance board is so crucial. You can certainly have many purposes or objectives for it. For this particular instance, it's really broadening the knowledge of all the areas of Office 365 through transparent service and tenant management, focusing on ROI and adoption. So whatever it is in your organization, figure out what to call it. It doesn't even have to be governance board. It could be governance team. It could be a deployment team. It could be a Microsoft team. I mean, whatever you call it, it's really a place that all of you can get together and connect and share information. So how do you do that? You really have to figure out what's your steps in your organization to operationalize Office 365. So I'm going to walk you through a series of how I was able to accomplish it using the crawl, walk, run, fly method. So the first one is really starting the conversation. When you first get Office 365, it's usually maybe an IT decision, and maybe just a few IT people are a part of it. But as you've learned today, that isn't the case. We need everyone to be a part in sitting at the table. So we have to first identify who they are through that RACI document. We have to educate what is Office 365, what it means to your company, develop a plan of action. And of course, you're going to get challenges. Certainly the ownership, who owns what, that's going to be probably a conflict, because people will be trying to figure out who should own something when maybe they don't even know what that product does. So really clearly understanding all the different products and deciding who should really be connecting to it. Should SharePoint admin own conditional access? Maybe not, but just figuring out, well, who has that skill set, and is that in their role? Is that in their access for other things? So you'll definitely experience challenges partnering with people. It's very difficult sometimes, especially IT, reaching across the bounds of all the other departments. You have to do that now. I mean, we can't be siloed anymore. I think we need to connect to each other, and we need each other to be successful. So one of those is going to be, you're going to experience probably a culture change in your organization. I think most companies are doing that today. I see that as a digital transformation, especially when people have lived and worked and been working on documents and collaborating and communicating in a certain way for so long. It's like, oh, we don't have cords on the phone. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I could be outside and talking on it. Ooh, that gives me so much more capability. But that difference of going from that technology change and that shift, that can be a lot. We have 5 generations today in the workforce, and we all consume and communicate information differently. So understanding your organization enough to know that part will be really critical. And also, hopefully, your leaders will be able to communicate to everyone, we are going to transform, because that's really important. We need that leadership buy-in and that leadership to share that we are a transformative company and we are changing, especially in the times right now. We need to be able to react. We need to be able to be remote if we need to be remote. And this is how we do it. So really creating that kind of environment. So how do you implement? I'm going to cruise through these fast because I know we don't have a ton of time, but we've talked about a RACI chart enough. You got to prepare your ask. Like, what are you expecting from that group of individuals? Because they're going to sit in that room and go, why am I here? So figure out what you want from them. Invite them all to a meeting. Educate on the value of staying on top of change. You could just open up the Service Health dashboard, and that's enough to say, yeah, I'm in. I want to know what's going on, because it's so critical to know when there's a big user impact. Report on the current state. Who's in charge of what? Hopefully you know at that point at least a little bit. Some of the easy ones, of course, are Exchange admin, SharePoint admin. Usually you know somebody who's in Azure AD, maybe. Maybe you have somebody in Intune. Maybe you have somebody that's messing around with Flow or Power Automate. So, you may know some, but you may not know them all in totality. So bringing them into the room and saying, hey, what's your role, or what's your responsible area? And even looking for SMEs. Selling the why is pretty critical. Why are you in doing this? And I think we can all agree it's based on end user or employee satisfaction with the tools that they have to be productive and efficient. That's the whole goal here. Building your internal partners, and call to action is continue that conversation. And that conversation is really building a long-term plan, because now you have everybody that's talking about it. What do you do? This is where you start thinking about, what is our own organizational product roadmap? Build out your roadmap. Take a look at Microsoft, sure, but what's your roadmap? Are you just rolling out everything? Or are you doing things in phases? Do you have things blocked because of there's certain reasons and you don't have time yet to focus on? So think of what your roadmap is and that usage. develop focus areas. I'll definitely talk about them. Raise awareness of any product knowledge gaps. And what I mean by that is where people do not have that subject matter expertise. And that could be very difficult because there's no reason you should be trying to say, hey, we're moving from this to this, but you don't have anybody in-house that knows how to do it. So whether that's getting a partner or ramping up somebody that has passion around it. So figuring out how to get to those gaps and then developing a meeting cadence. My suggestion, hands down, is probably a monthly meeting for your broad level governance board. Of course, you're going to fall into challenges. Lack of knowledge. I have no idea what SWAY is. I don't want it. Let's block it. You know, there'll be those kind of reactions, but that would also be an opportunity to learn about what is that product. Does it have any value? Maybe there's a certain business group that it would. So, you know, be open. I wouldn't shut off things just to shut off things because you didn't understand. Obviously, there's resource commitment. You may miss subject matter experts, and you have to figure out really how to handle that. You may not have a single person who knows what a Power App is, and why does Power App sit inside of SharePoint, and be really confused. So knowing that kind of that product knowledge gap to be able to help you drive what you should be focused on for training or creating training for. And then missing product support. So how do we implement walk? Honestly, I think there's a few ways to do it, but you share what products your company has licensed. That's really critical because some people didn't even, or may not even realize that certain products that you had owned. For instance, you could own Azure AD P1, which gives you more capability for things like conditional access. Well, that'd be good to know, especially from the security side, to be able to manage who has access to certain applications in and outside of your network. So making sure everybody sees the whole picture of what you do have license for. Again, the product ownership, identifying all the admin roles. You certainly don't want everybody to have global admin, so understanding you're doing it, you're right sizing your admins. Reviewing your organization's product usage. That right there can definitely tell you might have a subject matter expert in a certain product. You can do that through M365 Usage Analytics. That's a free Power BI report that you can connect to your tenant that gets all the data and data sources and culminates them in this really great executive summary that shows you where people are communicating and collaborating. And then I would ask for commitment. I did break these governance boards down into focus areas because obviously meeting once a month doesn't really do much other than report on changes that have occurred over a month or big announcements or new products that you guys are going to focus on for rolling out. You've got to have focus areas. So I did that in 3 areas. One is product knowledge. That's going to be the lunch and learns. Another one is Microsoft Customer and Health Service Management. I'll show you that in a second. And then Tenant Management, and that's really for task force teams, right? That's your engineers that are cleaning up something maybe, or they're removing admins, or they're creating scripts to automate things. So product knowledge, we did monthly lunch and learns. And that's crucial. When there is a new product like Kazala, I bet people want to know about it because it just got rolled out to everybody. If you want to disable, what is it? Is it of value? If so, let's enable and put the training together. All right, there are certain things when I think about developing a governance board and the agenda items that I think that are crucial that you should be covering. You first want to think of, on the Microsoft side, what support tickets do you have with us? What are your support hours in your agreement? How much hours do you have? Looking at your service health dashboard, your message center, secure score. I could probably talk a couple hours on secure score. What's on the roadmap? Are you only allowing Intune managed apps in your company? What is the roadmap to those? And any other process requests, user voice that you're doing in your organization with Microsoft. On the flip side, you've got customers. your customer health pulse that you should be focused on. And that's, what are our help desk tickets? What are our trends? Did it have to do with a service health dashboard issue? Did it have to do with lack of training? Product service issues, project status, your roadmap, I mean, you name it, license and role management. Maybe you have a CHAMP program, adoption program. So think of these could really be separate task force teams underneath the governance board altogether. So some of those task force teams I've created have focused on license management, where we were delivering or giving out more licenses than we should have, and didn't realize when people were leaving the company, the license was staying. So really keeping on track of your licenses. Dynamic group management, monitoring your your Azure Active Directory health, your Connect Sync service, privilege role, who in your company has access to those specific admin areas, and is it just in time? Or are they just standing global admins everywhere? So realize, there is a way to provide kind of what I would call privilege identity management that's just in time, that is more secure. Secure score risk reduction, having a task force team that focuses on that. UAT, maybe you have a UAT environment and you're trialing new features and you're testing them out to see if that will work for you in production. Analytics, training, communication, on-prem storage server reduction, right? Reduce it. And then any shadow IT and reduce that. So that's a lot, but you'll get these slides. Now we've got run, embedding in your culture, really what to do. Kind of cycle it and say, how do I stay on top of change? Monthly, I am already looking at Message Center. I'm following this cool MVP that is really giving me up-to-date things, especially once a month through a video of what's new in Office 365. I've developed a communication plan with my communication team and with marketing. So when there is a change that occurs, I have already know who that change should go to. I have a continuous meeting bi-weekly. I have focus teams. Executives see things, but you're going to find challenges. Certainly, adding new responsibilities to any person doesn't always work. And not until you can connect to HR or their manager that this is crucial and critical, will you be as successful as you could be. Because bringing those two groups in to say, this is really valuable for all of our employees to be successful, and this person's role is this, and knowing that, so they get time that they can focus on it. It's hard if they don't. I'll just say it doesn't bode well, and it isn't as successful as it could be. So making sure that people who are in those roles, that they are noticed and that it's comfortable in their setup for success. All right, so how do you implement run? You take action, right? You do deeper analysis in the products. You remediate. So any Message Center posts that are monthly, that say plan for change or prevent or fix, that you're on top of it. Reviewing changes on a regular basis. Think of, not only do you have stakeholders that have responsibility of product and of activity, but what about governance activity? Maybe there are somebody who's in charge of monitoring Message Center, monitoring product roadmap, monitoring blogs for all these products. And then once a month, they put together a page of all the changes and then they just deliver it. I think it's a great thing that to have somebody dedicated in that role be really crucial. All right, be proactive. Monitor your roadmap, that sort of thing. Communicate. So developing a communication to change really is knowing what vehicles you have inside of your organization. So you communicate through Teams, intranet, Yammer. You may also communicate through email. So that's pretty common, but grouping that communication type and knowing who to communicate to. So delivering it to the right person at the right time. The last couple of slides here are about automation. Now that we have really a good rhythm of our governance and what we're doing, now it's how do we automate that communication creating that governance board, putting it in something like Teams, deploying Teams Advisor, assigning and tracking change in Planner, and then continue to create new ways to streamline. So this is a really good example of a Microsoft Team governance board decided to put in a Microsoft Team, and then each channel, it's actually curated because I have an RSS feed to the M365 roadmap. I've got a feed from the Message Center Digest and the Service Health. I've got an area for user voice, and then I have my M365 usage analytics, and then I have a security blog. So as you can see, you can think of what works well in your company and put it all in one location that you provide to the entire board access that they can see and consume themselves, and you can have conversations on it. So my recommendation is definitely find a place that's comfortable that you all work in and bring all that information together in one place that everybody can consume. And there are a couple new things here. One is Advisor for Teams. That's in preview. Inside of the Admin Center, you can deploy these, and what it basically provides for you when you deploy it is it gives you a Microsoft team, and then within that channel, it's a planner plan. And that really sets you up for success on rolling out Microsoft Teams and Office 365. This particular one is Chat, Teams, Channels, and Apps. And the other one is Meeting and Conferencing. So go through that, deploy that, I would recommend, and just pull stuff out of it that works for you that will help you gain your planning, your implementation, and your adoption. So final slide, what are the steps to operationalize change in your organization? Stay on top of it. Is really, here's my call to action for everyone. Start the conversation, talk to each other in your company, talk to your manager, talk to security, talk to help desk, talk to legal. Make them a part of the product because they really, really are. Especially if something happens, they will be, guaranteed they will be. So start that conversation, build a long-term plan, embed it into your culture, and then start doing some cool automation. Make it really fun and make it a project that you can even share out to your end users of how you were able to collaborate and create a place where everyone could work together and be successful. So with that, stay informed, continue to communicate, and operationalize Office 365. Thank you so much. Nate, Greg, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
You bet.
A lot of great information on just change management. I think a lot of us have been in the middle of those scenarios, and just seeing it all laid out, it really kind of brings me back to some of those times where not getting involved in something early enough or getting involved too late really created some struggles. So it was great to see that timeline.
Great.
Right. So I know we're a little bit over time, but if there's any questions in the chat, we'd love to address them. I think Michelle said she'd be making the slides available, so we'll make sure those get out to everyone. We also recorded the session, so as always, we will make that accessible to anyone. And doesn't look like we're getting any questions, so I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Again, big thank you to Michelle. Excellent presentation. I know we really learned a lot today, and appreciate your time.
You bet. Great. Thank you. Thanks,
everyone.
Be here. Thank you.
Good job, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking good, Michelle. Good job.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Michelle, it's Leanne. I wanted to say awesome, and you look lovely. Is there a way that you can share your awesome presentation with us?
You bet. I will go ahead and send it over to Nate right after this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.